Give the current Daf Pesachim Daf Hey. Begin on the top line of the Amid. We're continuing the halacha from our previous Mishnah, discussing the laws of the topic of our parak, Malkin Shenogur, regarding the halacha about doing malacha on Tisha B'av. Krishna is joining us for today's Daf. Something we're going to discuss in today's Daf are the concept of shiur, which is the appearance of religious arrogance by either refraining from malacha on Tisha B'av, which who do you think you are that you're not doing malacha as if you're a Talmid Chacham, or saying Krishma on the Chassan's wedding night, which is the person can't have kavanah, right? The Chassan b'Nacht, even it's hard to have kavanah. Who do you think you are that you're saying Krishma as if you can't go one night without saying Krishma? Then we discuss we're going to do malacha on Erev Pesach. Is that a minig, as it seems like from the opening Mishnah about Parak, or as it seems like from the next Mishnah that it's a halacha? Then the Gemara distinguishes between completing work on Erev Pesach or starting work on Erev Pesach. And the Gemara also makes a differentiation between the work done shaloi l'tzarech hamoed and that which is done l'tzarech hamoed for a Yom Tov purpose. Then we discuss doing the following work on Erev Pesach or Chol HaMoed, replacing a hen that's no longer on its eggs, sweeping waste from under the animals, and bringing things to a craftsman. Again, these are things that are tircha, and it could be possibly or permitted or not on Erev Pesach, which is compared to on some level to that of Chol HaMoed. Some of the key terms the concept discussed in today's daf are kama batlani ikadashukah. There's many idle people in the marketplace that are just not working. And makes it seem cool is the concept that we consider part of the day as if it is a whole day. So we begin the current daf. We said in the Mishnah, Tanakh said, although there's different minhagim if a person does malach on Tisha B'av or not, but Talmid Chacham, wherever he is, he should have that custom of not doing work. On that, the Rabbi Shloimy he says, a person should always make himself into a Talmid Chacham. So although you're not really, you should conduct yourself like Talmid Chacham and don't do work on Tisha B'av. And that says the Gemara, remember, is that to say the Rabbi Shloimy is somebody that he holds you're not concerned for religious arrogance. He's saying, yeah, even though you're not a Talmid Chacham, act like one and don't do malacha. The Rabbanan Sabi Chashim Liyura and the Rabbanan that they are concerned for Yara and they say, no, not a Talmid Chacham. Not a Talmid Chacham. If the meaning of Malcolm is to do work, go ahead and do work. Says the Gemara, the problem is what we actually learn the opposite of their interpretations in the Mishnah that not Mesechtes Brachos. Mishnah says, Chassan, a Chassan, if Mirza Liker's Krishma, Leila Harishon, they want to say Krishma the first night of his wedding, Kare, you could say Krishma. Shmuel says, no, not anyone who wants to take the name, the crown of precious and the fear of sin, that he can't go one night without even Kabbalah Mach Shemayim. Not whoever wants to take a detail could take it, because it looks like arrogance. And we protest, and we say that no, you can't say Krishma, you can't have Kavanah right now. Today we do say Krishma because Halavai we had Kavanah any night of the year. But this was in Talmudic times, this was a dispute that they have. But one thing is, we see that the exact opposite. In our halacha, Shmuel is saying, yeah, conduct yourself like Talmid Chacham. Chacham is saying, no, you're not a Talmid Chacham, do work. And here we say the exact opposite. Shmuel says, no, you can't say Krishma by the night for the Chasna. That's your error. You're arrogant. What do you think you want that you can have Kavanah? The Chacham is saying, no, say Krishma. So it's exactly the opposite of how we quote them over here. So the first approach, this is right, Machlefes Hashita. The Tana who organized the attribution of the names, he made a mistake by one of them, you have to switch it around. Rabbi Shmuel is switched around on one of them, whichever one it is, and to make it uniform, who's concerned for you and who's not. But in classic Talmudic style, Rav Shisha B'Rav Idi, he says, no, light table, you don't have to switch it around, and I'm going to show you how what seems to be the exact opposites are actually not a contradiction. The Rabban like Kasha, because Hachal be here, we're going to do Malach on Tisha B'av, where they say that if you're not a Talmid Chacham, you can't refrain, you have to do your work. You know why? Since everybody's doing work in your Malkum, meaning if the meaning of Malkum in that town is that everyone does Malach on Tisha B'av, he's not doing, he's sitting in shul today somehow. Mechzikura, it looks like arrogance. What do you think you are? Everybody in this town eats gebrach, everyone in this town does Malach, and you're not. So therefore it's problematic. By saying Krishma by the Chasna, keeping the Kol HaMakari. Everyone's saying Ma'arav Nuch the Chippah, everyone's going to say Ma'arav. But you, Namakari, is also saying Krishma. Let me execute it doesn't look like arrogance. It fits right in. Everyone's doing this. So therefore it's not a contradiction. And also the other way around, also, it's also not a difficulty. Why? Hasam over there by Krishma, who did in Kavan. When you say Krishma, you have to have focus. These are the basic ones, Krishma and the first bracha Shema, that's the basics. You have to have Kavanah. Vanat Sahadi, and we can testify. He can't think about anything. The guy's so preoccupied with what he has to do. So shiur, that looks like arrogance because we know you can't have Kavanah. Even though everybody went to work and he's sitting around, he's not doing work, that doesn't look like arrogance. Why? Because Amri, whoever sees him not doing anything, is going to say, Malachu de Leslie, he must be part of Kalzach and Yechezkel, he just doesn't have any work to do. Doesn't look like he's doing anything because it's Aser. Put Kazi, come about look around how many people walk around singing songs at 11 o'clock in the morning, coming and going. It doesn't look like any arrogance, you just look like the rest of us. And therefore it's not a problem about any arrogance. So that resolves the seemingly contradictions regarding who's concerned with Yura and who's not. Now we get to the next Mishnah, which we had taken a detour. We had said Malkum Shenogu, which the first Mishnah had spoken about the topic about Masechta, which was the Minig HaMakom, we're going to do Malacha, Erev Pesach, Before Chatzais. Then we got on the whole detour, talking about many different Minhagim in different places, we're going different halachas, Malacha, Tisha B'Av, many different things. Now we're going back to that halacha about doing Malacha on Erev Pesach. Then the sages say, so it's like continuing from the theme of the opening Mishnah, they say in Judea, which is in the area in Eretz Yisrael, they would do Malacha on Erev Pesach up until noontime. In Galilee, which up north, they didn't do Malacha at all. That's regarding the day up until Chatzais. Now Halayla, the night before, what's called Orla Ba'asr, the night when we do the B'dikas Chametz, they say you now do Malacha. With some material, now the Netzacham Basil says it's permitted up until sunrise. Now the Gemara says interesting. Made Kara in the beginning, meaning the beginning of the parak, Tanim and Haga. That's where we got the title of this parak, Malkum Shenogu. You said it depends on minig. If you do Malacha up until Chatzais and Erev Pesach or not. Well, besides, and here in this Mishnah, Tani Yisura. You're talking in words of prohibition. You're saying Bisham B'Oisrin, B'Silah B'Matirin. Those words sound like that it's an absolute. It's either it's halacha. It's either permitted or forbidden. So it's not minig. So which one is it? Is it minig or is it isser? Is this something that it's a custom or it's either that you hold it asr or mutter? That's not the same thing as minig. That's like fitting. A halacha is, no, we say it's forbidden. And therefore, so which one is it? So Amar B'Yehuda, it's not difficult. It's not difficult. It depends. Each Mishnah is a different Tanakh opinion. Ha Remeir, the opening Mishnah of our parak was going like Remeir. Ha Rabbi Yehuda, our Mishnah, who says that it's dependent on isser or heter, is going like Rabbi Yehuda. It's not like Luna Brisa. Amar B'Yehuda, he says, Yehuda in Judea, they would do malacha Erev Pesach up until noontime. Ubegalil, like we said in our Mishnah, Ubegalil, in an ice and they didn't do malacha at all. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei Meir says to him, Ma Raya Yehuda Megalil, what are you bringing Yehuda Megalil over here? Whatever. If a place that the Minig HaMakom is to do that they would do it, so they do it. If their custom was not to do it, so it's not to do it. What are you bringing Yehuda Galil? Ella rather, says Rameir, Makom Shenogu Lasa Malacha Eisen. If the Minig HaMakom is to do Malacha, then you do it. Makom Shenogu Lasa Eisen. If the custom of the place is not to, you don't do it. Says the Gemara, and Tess discusses why he couldn't prove this in the Mishnah itself. Minig Ka'amir and Meir and Hagam the Vector, and Meir says that it's a Minig Mechlal, Rabbi Huda. So obviously his dispute Rabbi Huda is Yisur Kamer is saying that no, it's prohibited. B'nai Yehuda say it's permitted. Their Dayanim says it's mutter, and the Galilee they paskin they rule that it's usher. Because if you think that Rabbi Yehuda was saying minig, so what Rabbi coming to disagree? Rabbi Yehuda also says in the Galilee that they were noig iser and they were stringent on themselves. In Yehuda they were noig heter. So what would he be different than Rameir? Obviously Rameir is saying it's minig, and he's the halal, he's the Tanakh of our Mishnah in the beginning of this parak. And here we're saying lashon of usher and mutter. It's going like Rabbi Yehuda who holds it's not totally minig. It's totally in the psak how you rule if it's usher or heter.
Usher is like Chalmoid, not like Yom.
Well,
it says usher is like Chalmoid.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, Chalamoid has. You're right. Chalamoid is not totally a minig. It's usher mutter versus that of just if it's a minig, if it's a minig or not. Now, so now the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yehuda hold Arba Aser on the 14th of Nisan, Erev Pesach, before Chatzais, mutter basis malacha, because he said that Bnei Yehuda, those in Judea, they were matter. They said permitted, right? He's saying it's Esther hat, it's not minig, and Bnei Yehuda they said it's mutter. So is that so that Yehuda, according to Bnei Yehuda, that he holds that it's permitted to malacha on Erev Pesach before Chatzais? But Vatani, the Gemara is going to bring an interesting question to seem to indicate that he holds that you now do malacha on Erev Pesach. Because Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda, the same Rabbi Yehuda that we're asking on. He says, Hamanachish, if someone was weeding, he was taking out the weeds from between the stalks of grain. B'shleishas on the 13th of Nisan. The Gemara is going to shortly explain why we're picking specifically on the 13th of Nisan. But as he was weeding, the necker beyond by mistake, he pulled out one of the stalks and he uprooted from the ground. Now he wants to put it back in that it could take root again. He by mistake pulled out the wrong one. He wanted to pull out the weed. He pulled out these stalks of grain. So what he has to do is, he should replant it back where it's a moist ground, so that it could quickly absorb the seed before the Eimer. The Eimer, which is on the second day of Pesach, on the 16th of Nisan, it permits whatever had taken root already. But if it takes root after the Eimer was brought, it's going to be forbidden as new grain until you bring the next Eimer. So you're going to have to wait a whole year, because the new grain is only permitted with the Eimer. So you have to plant it in the moist ground, and you can't plant it in the dry land, because there it's not so quick to take root, and if you're not going to get it in, then it's not going to take root, and then it's not going to be permitted till the next year, the second day of Pesach. Now, it says the Gemara, one thing you see is B'shleisha Aserin. Reader says, oh, this is only on the 13th of Nisan. But it was on the 14th of Nisan, then no, then it wouldn't be a good idea, then it wouldn't work. Now, so why did he pick the 13th of Nisan, not the 4th of Nisan? If it's because that it's not going to take root before the Eimer, which is sacrificed on the 6th of Nisan, says Gemara, wait, let's see. Shemila Rabbi Yehuda Dama, we know Rabbi Yehuda is the same Rabbi Yehuda, it's all Rabbi Yehuda that we learned in the first pack, Rosh Hashanah, that Yudam Beis, that he says, Kol Harkava, any grafting, which is the same thing like plugging in one tree into another one, basically regarding taking root. She'eni Koletis L'Shlosh Yom, if it doesn't absorb, if it doesn't take root in 3 days, Shuveni Koletis is not going to go ahead and take root anymore. So says the Gemara, V'isa Gedai Techiv, you're entertained to say, Arba Asar Mutter Basis Malacha, then the 14th of Nisan, you're allowed to do work, which is what we were saying, Rabbi Yehuda holds in our Mishnah, that it's Mutter according to Bnei Yehuda. So Lama L'Shlosh Asar, then why do you have to go ahead and say this case in the 13th of Nisan? V'ikar Arbesar, you could do it on the 14th of Nisan, the Chameser on the 15th of Nisan, or mix the Shitzer in some of the 6th of Nisan until the time when you sacrifice the Eimer. That is going to be 3 days that it's going to take root. Because anyways, after 3 days, it doesn't take root anyway, and then it's going to be permitted anyway because it never took root, and it's not going to take root anymore anyway, like Tyson discusses. So put it this way: it takes 3 days. You have 3 days, 14, and 15, and 16. So obviously, because malacha is forbidden on the 14th, you couldn't say the case then, even though it'll be 3 days. But you can't do malacha. That's why he said on the 13th. That refutes what he says over here. That according to the Yehudi, you allowed to do malacha on their Pesach. Some Rabbi says no, it's not difficult. Begalil Shah. This halacha is talking about the Galilee, which they didn't do malacha at all on the 14th of Nisan. As we said in our Mishnah, in Yehuda they permitted, in Galilee they said it's forbidden. And that's according to whom the Mishnah is going like. The Gemara, however, rejects that and says, but you have nighttime. You could have said, whoever's weeding by the night of the 14th. Why do you have to say the day of the 13th? You're right. We hold like Beis Hill that you can do malacha up until Netzachama. So although that you can't do the weed whacking during the morning of the 14th, but you could have done the night of the 14th, and then again you wouldn't have to say it's on the 13th. So on that, Amar Rav Sheshis, he says, you're right, it's K'Bei Shammai. Our Mishnah is like Beis Shammai, who says that the night is forbidden also. So therefore it couldn't have been the night either, and therefore it was said on the case of the 13th of Nisan. Rav Ashi gives a different approach. He says, no, it could even be like Beis Hill. So then why didn't you say it at nighttime? If you say in dark, some of the other malachas just not know for people to start weed whacking, and the night of the Arab, the Nufta B'dikas Chumetz, you start going and taking out the weeds. That's why. So that's what he said on the 13th. But you're right, it could have been technically on the night of the 14th. Rav Nami says, and this was all if you say it's in the Galilee, and that's why you couldn't do it during the day. And then the Gemara asks, why can't you do it at nighttime? Oh, either like Bishamai, or because you just don't normally do it at nighttime. Rav Nami says, L'ilm B'Yehuda. We could even say that the halacha is even being said in Judea. And the question is, wait a second, so why say it on the 13th of Nisan? Say it on the 14th of Nisan, because you tell me you can do malacha according to Bnei Yehuda, and then you have 14, 15, 16, you have 3 days, and it's going to take root before the is brought. And then he says, no. Uba Ashrasha, regarding taking root, Chad Miktasiyim Kukuli Amrinan. We only say one time the halachic concept of part of the day is like the whole day. So if someone was weeding by Bein HaShmashis of the beginning of the 14th of Nisan, so we would have said that, okay, then it took root the whole 14th, the whole 15th, and some of the 16th. But Trey Miktasayim Kukule Amrina. But to say 2 times Miktasayim Kukule, that we're not going to say. So if someone is weeding on the 14th of Nisan, we're going to have to say 2 Miktas. You have to say part of the 14th. It wasn't the whole 14th. You did it sometime during the day of the 14th. And 15th, and some of the 16th that we don't say, and therefore we didn't say, but really it's not a contradiction of Yehuda. It could be, like he says, as we explained in our Mishnah, that he holds that you actually allowed to do malacha according to the Yehuda on the 14th of Nisan. And so then why did we say this interesting case of taking root before the Eimer only on the 13th is because you're going to have to come on to 2 mix and kukule, which we don't do, and therefore at the 13th of Nisan. The next Mishnah, continuing on this theme, we're going to do malacha on Erev Pesach. Says the Mishnah, he says, Kol malacha sheheskel ba, koima ba asa. Any work that you started doing before Erev Pesach, so koima ba asa, you can finish it off on Erev Pesach. So although we said in the previous Mishnah, you're not allowed to do malacha, depending on the minhag. So he says, but if you started already, you're allowed to finish it on Erev Pesach. Aval, lo yaskel ba, b'eskel ba asa, but you can't start doing the work on Erev Pesach. Although you can finish it, because it's not going to take you so long, to start it, you're not allowed. Now, the sages said, they say, Gimel Umnius Isin Malacha. There are three craftsmen that can do their work wherever they are. And explain the reason why these three are exemptions. They are Chayot and the tailors, Fasapar and the barbers, Vakaisim and the launderers. And he says, Efratzan and also the shoemakers, all these are allowed to do Malacha on Erev Pesach. Now, Yibadu did the following question. It's a three ways to understand our Mishnah of this opening halacha of Remeir. So it says, so again, Remeir had said, any malacha that you started, you're allowed to finish on the 14th of Nisan, but you can't start it. So he brought the following three-part question. Which case was Remeir talking about that he says, you could finish, you just can't start? Was it something that's a Yom Tov need? And Abel Shalei, let's say it was not for a Yom Tov need, then actually for the Migmar Namiloi, then you can't even finish it off. Because you can only finish it off if it's for Yom Tov need. That's option number one. Maybe. No. Remeir was talking about that what you're doing is not for Yom Tov need. And that's why you can't start it on Erev Pesach. If it's a Yom Tov need, you could even start it on Erev Pesach. That's option number two. Maybe option number three. No. It doesn't make a difference if it's for Yom Tov need, not for Yom Tov need. Migmar in, you can finish it. You can't start it. So again, that was the question. Either he's talking about it was Tzarech HaMoed, or Shalei Tzarech HaMoed, or he's talking about both Tzarech and Shalei Tzarech, and there's no difference between either one of them. So it says the Gemara Tashma, the Gemara attempts to bring a raya from the following braces. It says in the brayse, however, you cannot start doing the malacha on the 14th on the Nisan Erev Pesach. I feel it's also caught, even if it's a small belt. I feel it's even if it's a small hairnet that goes to cover the head. Now, it says the Gemara, what does it mean an even? Lava filahani isn't it talking about even these things, which you need for Yom Tov? That you need the belt, you need that cap. And still, what do we see Migmar in? What you could do is you could finish it off as chuliloi, but you can't start it. So machlal, the inference is, and first of all, that's proving the idea that tzarech hamoed is, you're limited to finishing off and not starting. And also, you see the shalei tzarech, that if there's not for Yom Tov need, then Migmar named legamina, that we wouldn't even let you finish it off. That's like the first option. That this heter of finishing it off was only for Yom Tov need, but for non-Yom Tov, and that's why saying even these things, that only Migmar, because Yom Tov need, but not Yom Tov need, then you can't even finish it off. So the Gemara, no, truthfully I tell you, the Shalei L'Tzarech, that even if it's not for Yom Tov need, Migmar Navi Gamrina, you're allowed to finish it off in Erev Pesach if you had already started from before. Well, my Afilah, so why are we saying even? Afilah, Haminami, even these things that the Zuchininu, that they're very small, a small belt and a cap. This you would have thought to say the haskalas and zuigimar malachtan, starting it is like finishing it because it takes very quick. So you would think that you could even start it initially. They tell you that no, they didn't let us start, but it doesn't prove anything regarding that because only even these things that are tzarech hamoed, that only that you could end and not start, and therefore shalei tzarech hamoed you can't even end. No, we're saying even these things mean something else. Even these things that they're very quick and starting it is like finishing it. Even that. No, that you can't go ahead and start these things. You could only finish them off. So Gemara says, Tasha, let's try to bring another ayah. The Brisa says, Remeir, he says, any malacha that's for Yom Tov days or Ketinkum days, you can finish it on the 14th of Nisan, even in the place where the minhag is not to do malacha, like we said in our Mishnah, but you could finish it off. When we say this, only if you started before Erev Pesach. But if you didn't start before Erev Pesach, you can't start on Erev Pesach. I feel it's cotton, even a small belt. I feel it's even a small cap. Now, says the Gemara. So what do you see from this? That it's for a Yom Tov purpose, yes. But if it's not for Yom Tov purpose, then not. Then you can't even go ahead and finish it off. So again, you see like option number one. Says the Gemara, no. Who had done that for the Shalei Tzarech? No, it could even be, even if it's not for Yom Tov purpose, not Megamin, you could also finish it off. What's the Brisa coming to teach us? That even with Tzarech HaMoed, the Migmar in, that what you can do is you can finish it off askulilai, but you can't start it. So in other words, it could still be like option number 3. We're not proving that it's only by the tzarech hamayit that you can finish it off. Could be also shalom tzarech hamayit. So what are we saying here by tzarech hamayit that you could go ahead and finish it off? But we're saying that like option number 3 and not like option number 2. Not to say that, oh, it's only the shalom tzarech hamayit that you could end off, but the tzarech hamayit you could even start. No, that's how much at least we're proving. We're proving halfway, not proving all of the questions. We're proving that even in tzarech hamayit you could only finish and not start. But we still didn't prove maybe shalom tzarech also could end and not start, like option number 3. So it says the Martash must be arrived from the following brayse. He says, any work that's for a Yom Tov purpose. So again, here we're indicating clearly in these brayses, so if it's l'tzarech hamayit, gomer ba'abasa, you could only finish it on the 14th of Nisan. You see clearly in this brayse, finally the third one, it says, if it's not for Yom Tov purpose, then it's going to be forbidden. And we're talking about finishing. Which is no good, you can do malacha on Pesach until noon if it's the minig al makom. But says the Gemara, makom sh'no in only if the custom is tiyas. Loy no go loy, but if the custom is not, then you can't do even to finish it off because that's what the brayse is talking about. We're talking about gemar regarding finishing it off. So we clearly see in this brayse only if it's a yom purpose, and that's when you can finish it off. But if it's not yom purpose, then you cannot. You see like the first option that the halacha of our Mishnah was being said, l'tzarech hamayit. That's what the halacha is, that you can finish it off and can't start it, but shalei l'tzarech hamayit, then you can't even finish it off. Therefore, that resolves that question that we have. Now, the Mishnah continued and said, the sages, they say, shalish umnias, there's 3 craftsmen they could always do, no matter, even if the minig of is not doing halacha, even though it's not finishing off, they could do their work up until Chatzos and Erev Pesach. So, trying to learn the brayse explaining this, what's unique about these 3 professions. Hachayatin, regarding the tailor, the reason why we permit him to do malacha on the 14th of Nisan wherever he is because we find another leniency regarding him as in contrast to other craftsmen regarding chalish shalai. Why? She can head yid because regarding a regular person, Teifa Kedarka, he could sew in the normal way, but chalish shalai or chalamai, which a Mishnah might cotton. A person who's not a professional, he could sew on chalamai. So therefore, Erev Pesach, which is more lenient than chalish shalai, even a craftsman could go because since we see this leniency regarding shalish, then a non-professional could do it, a chalamayit. So on Erev Pesach, which is more lenient, so therefore then even a professional can go ahead and so on Erev Pesach. So to Hasan Parim Ba'Kaisim, regarding the barbers and the launderers, Shekain, why we being lenient on Erev Pesach? Shekain Abom, and say if someone comes from overseas, he's let out of jail. So the lach is Masapin and Machafsim B'Chalash Hamayid. They're allowed to take a haircut, they're allowed to wash their clothing on Chalash Hamayid. So again, same thing over here. Since we find some type of a heter on Chalash Hamayid, so therefore on Erev Pesach, which is even more lenient, so we permit it for everybody, not just for the guys getting let out of jail, the guy who's coming from overseas. We let everybody go ahead and get a haircut and get their thing laundered on Erev Pesach, because we find a leniency in these professions, we go even a little bit further and we let it for everybody on Erev Pesach. Now, then we had Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. He said in the Mishnah, Afarat, they said even the shoemakers, that they could work on Erev Pesach until Chatzos. And the reason is, same idea. Since the guys who would do pilgrimages to the base of Mikdash, to be becoming the mitzvah of Eile Regel, they would be able to fix their shoes on Chalash Hamayid. So because of that, we find a leniency regarding shoemakers on Chalash Hamayid. So therefore, then everybody will let up until noon on Erev Pesach. Says what do they disagree? Why is the Tanakh not mention the shoemakers? So the Gemara says if it's Ma'aseh of Yisrael that held the maiden Tchilas Malacha, you could learn at the beginning of doing work, meaning shoemakers that are making new shoes. You could learn it out Mesach Malacha from the end of the work, meaning about fixing shoes. So just like fixing shoes is permitted to be done on Chalash Hamayid, so making shoes would be permitted on Erev Pesach too, up until Chatzos, because you could learn out Tchilas Malacha from Zayt Malacha. Ma'aseh Tanakh Mahel, no, Ein Lamein Tchilas Malacha, it's not the same thing. You don't go to the shoemaker; it's not necessarily the same guy who is fixing the shoes. One is selling you the shoes, one is fixing the shoes, and therefore, although we find the leniency regarding fixing shoes on Chalash Hamayid, that wouldn't necessarily tell us regarding making the shoes, regarding the Ratzanan on Erev Pesach, and therefore he doesn't include that in the list of lenient professions doing malacha on Erev Pesach up at the Chatzos. We can now look at the next Mishnah regarding other heterim of malacha on the 14th of Nisan Erev Pesach. It says the Mishnah, Meishivin Shevachim and Tanagolim, which literally means say that you could settle the dovecots, the nesting place for the hens. But basically means to say when you put an egg beneath a chicken to make it warm to incubate, that should make a chick, it's called Moshivin Shevachim. And you could do that, you could put the egg beneath the mother under the hen, B'yadal on the 14th of Nisan. And V'tan Geilis, that this hen that's heating up the eggs, Shabarcha, if it fled from over the egg. So the halach is Machzir Neislam Kun, you could put it back to its place, which is going to ask, wait a second, you could initially place the hen on top of the egg. You have to tell them that you could bring it back, of course, if you could even do it initially, for sure you could return it. Now, Ve'en Mesa, and if the hen died, so then Meshivan Acheres Tachter, you could put another one to take the place of that hen. Then the Mishnah continues, Gerfin mitachas ragla behema b'yadal. You could shovel away the excrement from beneath the legs of the animal on the 14th of Nisan and throw it out. U'b'mayid, now, however, chalamayid, which has a more severe, as we mentioned before, halacha of malacha, so you can't throw it all the way out. Rather, misakal it's what you could do is you could move it to the sides. Continues the Mishnah, Mailichin Kalim. You could bring vessels, Mavin, and you could bring it back from the craftsman. Although it's not for a Yom Tov purpose, however, you're allowed to go ahead and bring it and take it back from the craftsman if it's for, even though it's not for a Yom Tov purpose. And we'll discuss in the Gemara exactly what's the parameters of that halacha. So the Gemara asks, as we had mentioned, if you're telling me that you could even go ahead and initially place the chick on the eggs, so I have to tell you they could bring the chick back if it started and it ran away. So Mabaye says, Seifa, the next case that said that Marzim, you could bring the chick back, Asan Lochel Shemayt. It's actually Tom Achel Shemayt. And the Mishnah was saying, Meshivin Shebachim Yudal means to say that you could initially place the egg underneath the chick on the Erev Pesach. And regarding a hen that ran away, Achel Shemayt, you could bring it back because that's going to cause a loss for the eggs. Because once it started incubating, it's a loss because it's already now it's quasi-state. You can't eat it as an egg, and now it's not a chick either. So, in that situation, then you can bring the hen back. Which Amar Avuni actually qualifies, says, we didn't learn that in you could bring the hen back. Allah, he says two requirements. He says it has to be Teich Shleish Lamarda, has to be within 3 days. 3 days have not passed yet from when the hen has run away. And the reason why it has to be within 3 days is that the warmth has not left, meaning it's easy to get the hen back because there's still that warmth of the hen with its egg that it's incubating. And it also has to be has to be after 3 days, meaning the hen has already sat on the egg a period of 3 days before it got up and ran away and abandoned home, and because then the eggs already changed. If the hen's not going to come back, so it's a total loss because it's not fit to be eaten because it already started incubating. With the pastel it's going to be a total loss of the egg. Those are two requirements to allow to do this malacha on Chalashamayim to bring the hen back. Now, let's say it's already more than 3 days have passed. The missing hen, and finally someone calls up and says, I found this hen somewhere, it's already day 5. The parklet Zimmerman, where already it lost the warmth, where it's already hard and very difficult to get the hen back. Or even if it's within 3 days of when it ran away, but it didn't sit on the egg a period of 3 days yet. Like Kati Lip say, it's not going to be a total loss because it's still somewhat fit to be eaten. And then you can't put the hen back. So it requires those two criterion to be able to permit putting the eggs back, putting the hen back on the egg. Now, however, he disagrees. Even if it's within 3 days, and let's say it only sat on the egg for a day and a half, you could still bring the hen back. And the reason for that is because the egg changed a little bit. It's not fit for everyone to eat. Only someone that's not such a delicate person, a person that's a coarse person, he would eat that type of thing. So therefore, says the Gemara, what are they disagreeing with? So the Gemara explains. We're only concerned for a large loss. For a small loss, like over here where you could sell it cheap because our people are not so particular, we weren't concerned, we didn't let you do this malacha on Chalashamayim. Whereas the master, Rabbi held no, even for a small loss, because you're not going to have to sell it for a normal price. These are a little bit eggs that are, you might find part of a chicken here or something like that. So only the real, types of people that not particular will eat it. So therefore, that's why even within 3 days of the Shibasa, he permits you to bring the hen back because it's still a small loss, and therefore we permit you to do the malacha. Next halacha said in the Mishnah was Garfin mitachas. He says that on Erev Pesach, what you could do is you could shovel out the excrement and throw it all the way out. But on Chalash Hamayit, he says, no, that's more stringent. We said you could only move it to the side. So talking about when the brayso related to this, Hazel Shabachatzer, regarding the fertilizer, the excrement in the courtyard, the halach is Masakan Islet Stan. What you can do is you can move it to the sides, but you can't take it all the way out to the garbage out of the courtyard. Now, Shabaref is B'Shabachatzer, but if it's in the stable and in the courtyard, then we've seen this last whether you can even take it out to the garbage. So Gemara says, first you have an internal contradiction in the brayso itself. Ahmed Zebel Shabachatzer, he said that the waste matter in the courtyard, Masakan Islet Stan, all you can do is move it to the side. But other time, then you say Shabaref is B'Shabachatzer, but if it's in the stable and in the courtyard, but then you can take it out to the garbage. So what's the halacha ben achatzer? Some Abai says like kasha is not difficult because Khan. When did we say that you could take it out of the courtyard? Is b'yudal on Erev Pesach, like we said in our Mishnah, we're more lenient. Khan, when did we say go and move it to the side? Is b'chalash hamayit. Then that's like we said in the Mishnah. Then you could only move it to the sides. You can't take it all the way out of the courtyard. Rav Amay gives a different approach. He says no, hava b'chalash hamayit. Both are going chalash hamayit. This is what we're saying. It's really like it's like one case, the second case. Im nasa chatzar kiryefes, when it says sheberefes v'shebachatzer, it means to say that if the whole courtyard came like a stable, the whole courtyard got ruined, there's no room to move it to the sides. It's like a barn over here. Right? What do you think? We live in the stable over here? You heard the mama say that? It's like the whole place has waste. That's when mitzvah slash, but then you don't have to just move it to the side because the whole place is like a chazashtal. So then you could go ahead and take it out to the garbage. So they both can be told chalash hamayit, but again, it's one case over here. It's not chatzar and in refes. It's the refes is a chatzar. The whole plate, the chatzar is a refes, and then you could clear it out. Next halach in the Mishnah was malichin kelim mevin mebeis uman. You could go ahead and bring utensils, and you could bring back from the craftsman, from the person who fixes your stuff. So you could go ahead and bring it and take it back. Now, Amar Papa said, Badiglan Rava, he checked us out, he tested us. He said like this: Mishnah, as we just quoted, when you're allowed to bring and take back from the store, even though it's not for Yom Tov purpose, from the craftsman, you can go ahead and do that. The problem is, but he asked the contradiction on the Mishnah Masechtas K'moed Kam. It says, you're not allowed to bring vessels from the house of the professional. If you're concerned that maybe it's going to get stolen, then what you can do is you can clear it out to another courtyard that's near that craftsman, but you can't bring it home, which is very far from the house of the woman because of tircha. So that seems to contradict the halacha of our Mishnah. And then we answered, he said, like, that's not difficult. Kan our Mishnah, that's what we said, we'll explain in the Gemara. Our Mishnah is talking about Aser. It's about Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach. Yeah, even though it's not a tzarech hamayit, you're allowed to go ahead and go to the guy who's fixing your watch, and you're allowed to go ahead and drop it off, and you're allowed to go ahead and pick it up. But Kan, over here in the Mishnah Masechet K'moed Kam, there's about b'chalash hamayit. Chalamayit is more chamer. They're the tircha, we don't let you do that, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and bring it back home. You have to leave it there, and even if you're concerned he's going to steal it, so you gotta bring it just to the next door neighbor. You can't go ahead and bring it home. Ovi, by saying over one, you could say, no, hava chalash hamayit. Even our Mishnah is talking about chalash hamayit too. Look, that's not difficult. Why? Kan, the Mishnah might cotton is b'mamina. When you trust that craftsman, you're not concerned he's going to sell it, so then you can't bring it home. Or another interpretation is you trust him that he's not going to claim that you owe money a second time, and he needs to be paid right now, so you pay him, and you leave it by him. But Kan, our Mishnah is talking about when you don't trust him. When you don't trust him, so then that's where you can take it home, but they both could be told machalash hamayit. And it says the Gemara Batanya, this is where we're learning the brayso. That you see such a differentiation if you trust him or not, if you can bring it home or not. It says the brayso, you could bring vessels back from the craftsman, a chalamayim, like a jug from the potter, let's say when you need it. Those are things you need for Yom Tov. Or a cup, the becher from the one who makes the glass vessels. You can't bring back wool from the place where they dye it, which that's not for Yom Tov purpose. And you can't just bring back any vessel from the house of the craftsman because again, it's not a tzarech hamayit. Now, well, let's say the craftsman doesn't have what to eat, so you'll pay him, but you leave it by him. You won't take it back when you pay him. But then you don't trust him. I'm going to pay him. He's going to say next time I come to pick it up, he's going to say, "Oh, Schwartzberg, that's 1,500. I paid you already." You didn't pay him. So if you don't trust him. So what you do is you leave it, you take it, you pick it up, you leave it at the house next door, you knock on the client's door and you say, okay, can I leave it over here? I said, you too? Said, yeah, he needed to get paid. I don't trust him, so I'm dropping it off over here. Now, but let's say you're concerned that they're going to steal it from there. So okay, then what you could do is you could bring it discreetly into your house, and then we'll let you. But one thing we see is that we differentiate between if you trust the uman, or if you don't trust him, which is exactly like we said, and therefore that's a good answer to explain, because we had two approaches for our Gemara. We said either our Mishnah talking about Erev Pesach, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and bring it back and forth from the craftsman, and there is Tomah Chol Shemayim, that's where the Mishnah says you can. Or we said no, both are talking about Chol Shemayim. The question is, do you trust him or not? If you trust him, so then the Mishnah says you don't bring it back. Our Mishnah told him, we don't trust him, then we can bring it back. However, the Gemara rejects this interpretation, because Taratzto, you answered Meviyah. Our Mishnah said you could bring it to the craftsman, and the Mishnah says you cannot bring it to the craftsman. So you told me in the second approach, okay, both are talking about Chol Shemayim, but our Mishnah told me, well, you don't trust him. So therefore, you could go ahead and bring it back home. The problem is, Meilichin Kasha, there's two parts of this halacha. We said Meilichin u'Mevin. So Mevin, bring it back home, you answered, but we're going to bring it to the craftsman. What's Ein Maminoi? Not trusting him, but not let you bring it to him. And moreover, the Tani, we learned in that Mishnah in Moed Katan that says Ein Mevin, that you're not allowed to go ahead and bring it back home. Obviously, you would not be able to bring it, so that's a steer, clearly. How are you going to answer that? That can't go with Mamina or Ein Mamina. So it's clear, you're right, we have to answer like we answered before. To resolve the contradiction, Amish is talking about on the Yudala of Nisan Erev Pesach, and therefore you're allowed to bring and take back. And there, Tomah Chol Shemayim, where you're right, there you cannot bring nor take back. Sure can't bring it to him, because what would be the heter? And bring it back, you're not allowed either. Again, only if Ein Aminai, you don't trust him, then you would be able to go ahead and bring it back. But that can't be what the case of Amish is talking about, because Amish said you can bring it to him. And bring it to him, there's no Ein Aminai. And therefore, that's the resolution of that contradiction. So we're going to discuss in today's Daf and Psachim, Daf and Hey, with the halacha of our Mishnah. That said, the Tanakh says that Talmidei Chachamim, they don't do any work. Now, Shimon he says, no, every person should make himself like a Talmid Chacham. The problem is we're learning the exact opposite in the Mishnah Masechtas Brachos. We said, Al Chassan, regarding if you should say Kriyishma on the first night, Shimon says that no, loy kol right to little Hashem yitol. He can't say Kriyishma. And the Chachamim, the Tanakh says, yes, he could say Kriyishma. So the exact inverse of if they hold of Yura or not. So either says Gemara, you're right, Mochlefes Hashit. You have to say that the opinions were mixed up. Or no, according to Rabbanon, Malach on Tisha B'Av, that everybody's doing, and you're not. So that looks like Yura. Kriyishma, which yet everybody's saying Kriyishma, and you're also, so that doesn't look like Yura. Or Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg also you could say that Kriyishma we know needs kavah, and we know you can't have, so that looks like Yura. But Malach on Tisha B'Av, it doesn't look like you're doing any arrogance, because many people are not working. And therefore, it's not a contradiction regarding their opinions. Then we went to the next mission. They said that in Yehuda, they did malacha, and not in the Galilee. Now, regarding nighttime, Bisham says, Asr, Bishal says permitted. Now, the problem is, in the beginning of the parak, we opened up, and that's the title of our parak, Malkum Shenogu. We said, it depends on minhag if you do malacha Erev Pesach or not. Our Mishnah says, in terminologies of Isser and Heter. So is it Isser and Heter, or is it minhag? So, we said it's not a difficulty. That Mishnah was written Meir, and our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying, according to the people in Yehuda, that not only is there minhag not to, that they do, it's actually that they say that it's mutter to do malacha. The problem is, if that's the case, so why does Rabbi Yehuda say that you have to plant the stalk on the 13th of Nisan, not the 14th? What do you mean? If you tell me you're allowed to do malacha on the 14th, and it's going to be 3 days that it's going to take root, so then you'll have it before the Omer, 14, 15, 16. And when the Omer is brought, it'll be ready 3 days that it took root, and the Omer will be matrid. So why do you have to say your case of quickly replanting it on the 13th, and when you're allowed to do malacha on the 14th? So it says the Gemara, you can't say it's, because the Galilee, which they didn't do malacha, because, okay, but you could have done it at nighttime. At nighttime they say you're allowed to do it, so the Gemara says no, because it's talking like by Beis Shammai, who says nighttime is forbidden. Or, no, even like Basil, but it's not normal to do weed whacking on nighttime. And therefore, again, that's why we didn't say at nighttime, and therefore, and it couldn't be the daytime before, because they went like in the Galilee, so therefore we said on the 13th. Or no, you can even say it's in Judea, which yes, they say you're allowed to do malach on the 14th. So why do you say the 14th? 1456 is no, because you don't say two mitzvahs kikula. The mitzvah kikula is a concept, we'll say part of it like the whole day. To say two of them, which the 16th you're not having the whole day, because they bring the Omer before Chatzais, that's only part of the 16th, and you only have one whole day, the 15th and the 14th, you can say also part of the day because you're doing during the daytime. That we're not going to say, and therefore we didn't say it on the 14th because we won't say 2 mitzvah kikuli, even though we're going like Yehuda that you're allowed to do malacha on Erev Pesach. Going to the next Mishnah, the Meir said you're allowed to, although you're allowed to do malacha on Erev Pesach, but you could finish off the malacha on Erev Pesach. And Chum said there's 3 professions that could do: tailors, barbers, and launders. Why? So he said because we find certain leniencies regarding these professions on Chol Shamayim. Regarding sewing, a regular person could do a Chalamayim. Regarding getting a haircut and laundering your clothing, someone who came from overseas is allowed to do it on Chalamayim. So therefore, Erev Pesach, which is lenient, everyone's allowed to do these 3 professions. Now, Rabbi Shloimy says also the shoemakers. What's the machlekes? Because everyone agrees, yes, there's a certain leniency regarding fixing shoes of the oil regal on Chol Shamayim. So the question is, that's Seif Malacha. Could you learn a Tfilis Malacha, making the shoes from Seif Malacha? That was the machlekes reason on the Tanakama, if that would tell you that you go ahead and have the shoemakers working up until Chatzais and Erev Pesach. We have the following question: 3 different options how to learn the halacha by Mishnah Rabbi Meir. When did we say that you're allowed to finish and not start? That was only L'tzarech HaMoed, but Shalei L'tzarech HaMoed, you can't even finish? Or, no, actually, our Mishnah was talking about that Shalei L'tzarech HaMoed, and that is L'tzarech you could even start. Or the third one was, no, there's no difference between L'tzarech or She'en L'tzarech. The Gemara concludes, like the first option, that the halacha was said, only L'tzarech HaMoed, and that's where you could only make the Gemara. Then we went to the next Mishnah that we said that you could put the eggs under the hen to incubate on Erev Pesach, and you could bring it back, which we said, of course. So we said, oh no, that's the Machal Shemayim. But we said 2 to 9, 2 conditions. It has to be within 3 days of when it fled from incubating the eggs, so that it's still warm. And it has to be that it already sat on there for 3 days, because after 3 days, then the eggs are already total waste. Some say, no, even within 3 days, because it's still going to be a small loss, because it started changing over a little bit, and that madam is should even have some mood. Then we said you could go ahead and shovel the waste from beneath the legs of the animal on Erev Pesach and throw it out. And yep, no, you can't throw it out, you could just move it to the sides. Now, however, if the chatzar became like a refes, which we said is like one case, then you could even al-chalamai take it out to the garbage. Then we said you could bring vessels and take back from the base of Uman, even though it's not l'tzarech hamayid. So the Gemara explained, either because it's talking about on the Yodalad of Nisan, and when did we say Moed Cotton that's going to be forbidden? It's talking about Chol Shamayid. Or a second approach, which was subsequently rejected, we said no, they're both talking about Chol Shamayid. But our Mishnah is talking about that you don't trust him, and therefore you can take it back. And the Mishnah says you trust him, therefore you can't take it back. And the Gemara says no, it's still be a contradiction because what are you going to say regarding Mahilichle? That has nothing to do with Mamino or not. And if you have to say, like we said in the first approach, the Amish are talking about Yudal of Nisan, that you're allowed to take it and bring it to him, and there's Tomah Chalash Shamai, where you're not allowed to be Malach, or maybe the base one. Thank you to any time.